I did something kind of crazy. I uploaded 10 thrift haul videos for 10 days in a row on my YouTube channel. Not only that, but the day after uploading a haul, I would sell the items from that haul live on Whatnot. Let me tell you what I learned about Whatnot, but also about myself from this experience. Hi everyone, my name is Becky Park. I am a part-time reseller, and although I sell on a variety of different reselling platforms, in today's video, I'm going to share with you everything that I learned from the process of going live on Whatnot over the course of 10 days. I will have timestamps down in the description below in case you want to jump around and just go to the parts of this video that you're interested in. But first, let me give you some numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and read off of my notes here, but as you can see from this screenshot that I took today, I have $4,732.03 sitting in my Whatnot account right now that I can actually cash out. It's actually a little bit higher than what my spreadsheet said that I earned, and I'm not going to complain about it or tell anyone, but apparently I have $4,732 in my account that I have access to. We're going to do a deeper dive of some of my numbers later in the video, but over the span of 10 days, I sold 638 items. I did $5,501.25 in gross sales, and I made $4,527.24 in revenue. So my revenue amount that I just stated is after Whatnot's fees, and I'm not sure after what else, but my revenue is a little less than $1,000 under what my gross sales amount was. So I don't know the actual net profit because I haven't had the time to calculate all of my cost of goods yet. There were actually a lot of things that sold that weren't through the normal Whatnot show setting. A lot of the items actually sold through my marketplace, which I'll talk about later. But those are older items that I've had for a while, and they have different, cost of goods than maybe what I had factored for my shows. So I don't really know the exact number, and even the number of items that sold, it might be off by one or two based on people canceling an item during a show, or I don't know. It's close, okay? That's what you need to know. But I'm gonna estimate that my initial investment into everything, so my estimated cost of goods is around $1,800, which would leave me with an actual net profit of around $2,727.24. So if we want to break that down, that means over that 10-day period of going live every single day, I made around $272.72 a day in net profit. So if we were to break that down to see how much I made per hour, I would say on average, I spent about 1 hour and 52 minutes doing the show itself, and then I spent about 1 hour before the show loading my listings into the show, and I probably spent about an average of 2 hours per show when it came to shipping. Oh my God, we're going to talk about shipping later, but that took so much time. I'm also going to say that I spent an average about 1 hour thrifting per show. And so that means from beginning to end, from acquiring the items that were going to show up in the shows to actually shipping those items out, I had about 6 hours into each show. And that means I made about $45.45 per hour from that 10-day Whatnot extravaganza that I put myself through. Also, for the sake of full transparency, I did put a lot of time into the YouTube side of things when it came to this 10-day experience with Whatnot. Like I said, I had a video go up every day, which means I had to spend time filming that video. And thankfully, because I have a video editor now, I did not have to do the editing, but I did have to spend time, just kind of watching the videos back once he sent it to me, sending him any corrections or things that I wanted him to change. All of that takes time too. So I'm not even including that amount of time and hours that went into the YouTube side of things because we're just trying to focus on Whatnot. But if you want to count that, obviously the amount that I made per hour goes down even more. And then there is extra income that I'm not really going to talk about in today's video. For example, I did get some tips, people during shows would just tip me $5, or if you're this wonderful human being named Wee, you were tipping $50. Wee, I love you so much. But tips are something that I'm not really going to talk about in this video. And then also I did get a little bit of referral money if somebody used my link to sign up for Whatnot and made their first purchase after using my link. So those are extra forms of income that I'm not going to talk about in today's video, but those were there as well. But we're going to say my approximate net profit from that 10 days on Whatnot was around $2,727. So the big question is, was it worth it? Before I can answer that, let's do a deeper dive into what went into preparing for all of these shows. I started by brainstorming with my Whatnot rep. Her name was Lydia. She was amazing.
She's amazing. And she drove me here!
And here's actually a picture of me and her. I was actually in the area because my family went on vacation to Los Angeles to visit my mother-in-law. And on our last night, we stayed at a hotel that was literally a 3-minute walk away from their LA headquarters. And so Lydia gave me a little tour of the space. We had a moment to sit and chat just about my experience. And like I said, she really was the best rep that anyone could have asked for. And together, as we were brainstorming on how to kind of create some meaningful content about Whatnot, it was really more my idea to go as extreme as doing a 10-day live show extravaganza, but that's what we decided on. So I purposefully chose a pretty challenging time frame, 10 shows in a row in 10 days, just to kind of see if I could do it, to prove to myself that I could. Some people train for ultra marathons or Ironman competitions. I train to do a ridiculous number of live shows in a row. I don't know. We all have different goals in life. But I wanted to share a quote from a book that I'm reading right now. And the quote reads, "When you most feel like quitting is the time you must continue advancing." This is from the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. I highly recommend it if you feel like you're just not reaching your fullest potential. And I will have it linked in my description below. But I feel like I've gotten a little stagnant in my reselling. And I honestly can't say that I've challenged myself when it comes to reselling over the course of the last few years. So doing this 10-day challenge just seemed like a really good way to get myself a little uncomfortable and just push the limits of what I think I'm capable of. Another quote that I really like from the book is, "When you feel you can't continue, progress a little longer. Your self-discipline muscle will be amplified considerably." So obviously, I'm still alive, I'm here, I made it, and I do feel stronger. I do feel like my self-discipline muscle has grown quite a bit, and I was very proud of myself when all was said and done and I was able to show up consistently over the course of 10 days. Let's talk about what it was like to do 10 YouTube videos in a row and 10 live shows on Whatnot in a row. It took a lot of preparation, and we're going to talk about some of the things that I had to do to make that happen. The first thing was I had to acquire enough inventory for 10 shows. And I also had to have conversations with my video editor just to kind of talk about the logistics of how this was going to work. So I think in my head, originally what I thought was, on a Monday, I would go sourcing in the morning. I would come home, film the thrift haul. I would send it to my video editor. He would edit it really quickly and send it to me for feedback, and I would send that feedback to him. And then on Tuesday morning, I would go thrifting again. I would film the thrift haul really quickly. I would send it to him. Sometime during Tuesday, I would go live on Whatnot with Monday's haul. And I thought I would be able to do this over and over again for 10 days. When we sat down to really talk through it though, I was like, oh my God, that's not gonna work. I don't think there are enough hours in the day to make that work. And so we realized pretty quickly that I would have to do as much as I could on the front end when it came to things like thrifting and filming my thrift hauls, if I wanted to have the time in that 10-day span to do things that human beings need to do, like sleep and eat and, those kinds of things. So thankfully, in the middle of May, I want to say, one of my favorite local consignment stores had their birthday sale. So I went ham and bought as much stuff as I possibly could over the course of a few days. For their birthday sale, the way that they run it is you put as much inventory as you can into plastic shopping bags, and each bag costs $30. So I revisited the sale a couple of times, and in total, I probably spent around $1,000 with them. And that trip really helped me kind of organize what the themes for all of my shows would be, because I just was able to get so many dresses, for example, and so many coats, and it just kind of helped me flesh out how to organize my Whatnot shows. I believe that on the first day of the sale, I purchased around 99 items, I want to say. And then, like I said, I went back another 2 times and probably purchased another 40 to 50 items. After that, I did stop into local thrift stores and local Goodwills probably 3 or 4 times. And I don't know, at that point, I was getting a little discouraged because I wasn't able to shop in bulk at those thrift stores the way that I had at that, first consignment store. And I was getting a little worried about how I was going to accumulate enough enough inventory for these upcoming Whatnot shows. But thankfully, my local Plato's Closet was having their annual 70% off sale. And that sale took place probably in that first half of the 10 days that I was going live on Whatnot. So, probably like after I went live one day, I went to Plato's Closet, spent another like $600 there, and everything that I got at that Plato's was what I used for my final Whatnot show at the end of that 10-day spree. I also just had a ton of inventory lying around that I hadn't gotten around to listing yet. Really great stuff that, just was waiting to get listed, waiting to get photographed. And instead of listing those things the traditional way, I decided to just throw them in Whatnot shows. And then finally, I was able to fill out shows by pulling items that were already listed on other platforms and just throwing them into shows as well. And as a result, I would say I had an average of like 50 items in each of my shows. Some shows I had a little bit less. Like I think the least amount of items that I had per show was around 40. And then I think the last show I had like 136 items or something like that because I'm crazy. I would not recommend doing a show with 136 items, but I just wanted to go out with a bang. So now that I had accumulated as much inventory as humanly possible, I did spend a good amount of time trying to set up each of my shows for success. And here are the things that I did. The first thing that I did was schedule out all of my shows in advance. On Whatnot, if you didn't know, you can schedule out I don't know if it's as many shows as you want. I don't know if there's a limit, but I scheduled out all 10 shows. I did try to give each show a title, although, I made some tweaks here and there as the time went by. And I tried to schedule them for specific times, although those times changed a little bit here and there as well. But I just wanted to have them scheduled out so that when people were in a show of mine, I could remind them, hey, I've got shows coming up in the next few days. Make sure that you bookmark them. And if you don't have shows scheduled out, then people cannot bookmark shows, which means that when you do eventually go live, if someone has that show bookmarked, they're going to get an alert from Whatnot saying, hey, that show that you bookmarked is happening right now. Go ahead and jump on. And that's a pretty powerful tool that they've created. And in order to take advantage of that tool, I wanted to make sure that I had all of my shows bookmarked in advance so that as people were in, especially those earlier shows, they could go ahead and bookmark upcoming future shows. I did kind of mess around with going live at different times. So I think my first few shows, I went live in the evening, and obviously that's because I was working still and had school in the mornings. And when school was over, I tried going live more during the day so that I would have more time after the show to prepare for the following day and all of that kind of stuff. And I was also curious to see if going live at different times of day would have an effect on my sales and how many people showed up to each show. But I would say generally speaking, there were a similar number of people in each show, whether it was in the morning or in the evening. And I did try to stay away from extreme times. It's not like I ever went live in the middle of the night or 4 in the morning or something like that. I always kept it to later in the morning around 10 or 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, or early evening, 7 or 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So another question people have in regards to Whatnot is if they need to do themed shows. And that was a question that I had for Lydia. I asked her if she thought I should just kind of do 10 random shows where it was here are the next 60 items from my most recent thrift hauls, or if she thought I should theme them. And by theming them, I mean, should I do a show that's all athletic stuff or all women's size extra small stuff? Or should I just do it completely randomly? And after talking with her, we decided on doing as many themed shows as possible, just because then people know what they're showing up for. And if people kind of know that, they don't need any more athletic gear, then that's a show that they can just choose to not show up for because they're not going to get a lot out of it. Or if someone has a lot of formal events coming up this summer, a lot of weddings and bridal showers and baby showers and things like that, and they need a lot of summer dresses, knowing that I had a summer dress show, maybe that was one that they really kind of cleared their schedule for. So that was the route that I decided to go. And I just tried to make sure to have as much variety as far as sizing was concerned in each show. So here were the themes for each show. My first show, and it was probably the second biggest show that I had, just because I found so much inventory of this particular theme, was summer dresses. I called it Summer Lovin'. It was dresses and skirts for all occasions and all sizes. After that, I did just an athletic show. It was a lot of Lululemon, Sweaty Betty, Beyond Yoga, that sort of thing. After that, I did a show called Today's Trends and Vintage Stunners. So it was a lot of just what's popular right now, plus a lot of vintage stuff because vintage stuff is very trendy right now, I would say. After that, I did a show that was entirely fall and winter dresses, as well as like fall and winter boots, because I found a ton of fall and winter dresses at that consignment store. And then I just titled one, I thrifted 4 different places for this haul. And that was all stuff that I got when I went to like local Goodwills and local thrift stores, because the hauls from those 4 different places barely made enough for one Whatnot show. Because like I said, it was kind of hard to thrift in bulk at those places. There just wasn't enough good stuff for a Whatnot show. And then the next show was Let's Get Cozy. This was all like mainly sweaters. I think there were some like sweatpants and stuff in there, but it was a lot of like fall and winter attire. And it was a lot of cashmere, actually. I had found a lot of 100% cashmere pieces, which was great. After that, the theme was summer lovin' again, but this was more just like shorts, tank tops, t-shirts, that sort of thing, not dresses. And then after that, I did a show that was entirely outerwear. It was all like jackets and coats and vests. And I was a little worried about that one because I was like, who's going to buy this stuff at the beginning of the summer? But I just had a lot of that kind of inventory because that's what they had a lot of at that particular consignment store. And it was great stuff. Like I had brands like St. John, Save the Duck, Cole Haan, Calvin Klein. And that was actually like my second best show. I sold the least number of items because I didn't have that many to begin with for that show. But my sales and revenue were second highest after my last show where I sold like 136 items. And my average sales price per item was the highest out of all of my other sales. So even though, you know, it was definitely not in season, it did actually do well for me. And I think it did well because people came expecting coats and jackets and vests and things like that. And then the last 2 shows were pretty random. The second to last show was just, how have these not sold yet? It was mainly stuff from my existing inventory that I had pulled for the sake of the show, and maybe stuff that hadn't sold in previous Whatnot shows. And then my last show, like I said, was all stuff that I got at Plato's Closet, maybe a couple of other random things. That show had really good stuff in it. I had a pair of like Tom Brown shorts. There was Alphalete. There was, oh my gosh, I can't even remember. Like so much great stuff in that show. Actually, a lot of athletic wear for that show as well, but that was my best show. And a lot of that is because I had the most number of items available for sale in that Whatnot show. So I do feel like theming the shows helped me stay organized. It helped people get excited about the upcoming shows. It's definitely what I would recommend if you're able to do a themed show. But even if you just kind of do a random, like, here's what I have for sale today, I think that's honestly the majority of what we're seeing on Whatnot, and it can do well. Another decision I had to make was if I wanted to preload my Whatnot shows. So if you're familiar with Whatnot, you've probably seen some of those shows where they actually don't have their show preloaded. You don't really know at all what it is that they're going to have up for sale, except for what they told you in the title of the show. And a lot of times people who are pulling things out of wholesale pallets that they've purchased, they're not going to tell you what they have for sale. It's just kind of you wait to see what they're going to show you. A lot of those sales move really fast. And a lot of times the sellers have some sort of system. They've got like, you know, numbers on each of the items and they know what they're selling, but you don't know. I didn't think that that was going to work for the kinds of shows that I was doing. And it also didn't really make sense for me to not preload my shows in advance. And the reason for that is because when you do preload a show, when you do, you know, have a listing for each item that you're going to be selling in your Whatnot show available in advance for people to see, then the nice thing is people can go in and start pre-bidding on items. They can start setting alerts for items and just kind of generally build an excitement for what it is that you're going to have in your show. And for me, since I was uploading a thrift haul on YouTube the day before each show, I knew that it was in my best interest to go ahead and preload my show with all of those items so that people could go straight to Whatnot after watching my YouTube video and start setting alerts and pre-bidding on the items that they were most excited about because they had just seen it in my video. It would really be such a missed opportunity if I didn't preload the show. And I feel like for my first show, I was able to have my Whatnot show preloaded in time for when I uploaded that first haul video. After that, though, it was like just so hard to even get the show loaded in the first place that I knew I wasn't able to do that. And that would have been really powerful if for each time that I uploaded a YouTube thrift haul, that Whatnot show was already preloaded so that people could even just like be on Whatnot looking at the show as I was doing the thrift haul and, you know, kind of doing their pre-bids and alerts. Like that would have been ideal. I just couldn't get my stuff together enough in time to do that. But when it came to preloading my show, for the most part, I did not include pictures of each item just because I knew that was going to take so much time. I did do that for my last show, however. I took pictures of every item if I wasn't able to find a stock photo for it. And I even measured the inseam of all bottoms, like shorts, pants, and I did enlist the help of my husband. He was the one that took pictures of a handful of my listings and took measurements of the inseam and whatnot. And the whole time he was like,
"Are you sure that this is necessary?"
And I was like, I just want to have like the best last show possible. And I know for myself personally, I don't buy bottoms unless I know what the inseam is. And I didn't want to break up the flow of that final show or of any show really to like do measurements. And so I don't even know if it helped, but that was one thing that I did for one show and honestly probably never again. Another thing that I tried to do for each show was create a personalized thumbnail for each show. And the reason for that is because that way at a quick glance, people could get an idea of, you know, what kinds of things would be for sale in that show, as well as, you know, the kinds of brands that you would have available. You know, it doesn't take that much time. I just use an app called Canva to create my thumbnails. It's a fun way to just kind of be creative and silly. Like you can see in this thumbnail right here where I called it the Get Buff Show. I just found a picture of an Asian female bodybuilder and put my face on top. It's ridiculous, but you know, it kind of causes people to pause and be like, what is this? And hopefully bookmark the show and show up for the show itself. Another thing that Whatnot recommends you do is create like a video teaser for your show. And I really only had time to do that for the first show. I didn't do it for any of the shows after that first one. I don't know that it had a negative impact necessarily, but it is something that you can do as well. The final step was to advertise the show itself. Obviously, I think that the thrift haul that was uploaded the day before on my YouTube channel was a great advertisement for, you know, the following day's Whatnot show, but I also tried to advertise to people who are not on YouTube, you know, to my Instagram community. I would post in my stories about upcoming shows, and I also tried to post about the show, you know, under the my community part of YouTube. I just tried to let as many people know about the show as possible. So those were all of the things that went into kind of creating what I would consider a successful Whatnot show. Just, you know, being organized and prepared and letting people know what's going to be in the show, letting people know about the show itself, having good inventory for the show. That was all of kind of the prep work. And then there was the show itself, which, you know, I think does go a lot smoother if you have all of those organizational things in place. And then there was the shipping. Oh my God, I cannot stress to you how much I underestimated how long shipping was going to take. Like I made the mistake. So, you know, I don't remember when my first show was, but I just did 10 days in a row. And in that 10-day span, obviously there was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I made the mistake of saving up all of my shipping from my Friday, Saturday, and Sunday show for Sunday night because, you know, even though they can take the post on Saturday, I think I did like a Friday night show and I just didn't have the energy or the ability or the time to do my shipping from that show. I think I had to like load in the next day's show. I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, saved up all of the shipping from my Friday, Saturday, and Sunday show for Sunday night. It was a mountain of clothes. Like I think it toppled over a few times. And I think it took me, this is not an exaggeration, 6 solid hours of shipping to get through that mountain. I mean, it was like hundreds of items that needed to get shipped out. My husband did help a few nights. And after my final show, I remember I went live that morning around like 10 or 11. And then I think I maybe started shipping a little bit after that final show, but I just had like other things I had to do. You know, I like played with my kids, did stuff like that. And then for dinner, my family went out to eat burgers with my good friend Chiwon and her family. She actually went thrifting with me the first time that I went sourcing for this 10-day extravaganza. She went to the consignment store with me and she kept telling me like throughout this whole journey, she was like, if you need need help with shipping, let me know. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, it's okay. But that final day, her family came over and she helped me ship the items from my last show. Her son helped me. My daughter helped me. It was really sweet. It was really cute. And honestly, without them, it would have taken me like hours longer than it actually did. So once they left around like 11 p.m., my husband helped me a little bit more. And I think that night I went to bed at like 2 in the morning once I finished up. So shipping is no joke. And honestly, it got to the point where I was just on my feet so much during this 10-day period. I actually would do my shows standing. And shipping, obviously, you're moving around, you're bending over a lot, you're doing all these different things. At some point, I think I like pulled something in my side. Like I was just in pain. I remember the final day of shipping. Again, this was such an extreme experience and not like a normal whatnot experience. But honestly, by the end of the 10 days, my body was breaking down quite a bit. Now, when it comes to shipping, the one thing I was so thankful for was USPS's porch pickup. I've heard from a lot of you that for whatever reason, porch pickup may not be available to you. And if that's the case, I'm so sorry. There was one day, it was the Monday after, the 3 days of sales that I allowed to accumulate. I got done shipping those items at like 2:30 in the morning, Sunday night, Monday morning. 2:30 in the morning, I got my phone, I tried to do porch pickup, and it wouldn't let me do it because you have to schedule a porch pickup before 2 a.m. So I had missed it by 30 minutes, and that meant I had to take those items to the post office myself. I really thought I was going to die. Like I really thought bringing those IKEA bags of items into my local post office, I didn't think I was going to make it. And every other day, I made sure to schedule that porch pickup before 2 a.m. And the crazy thing is because, I would say like, I have 72 items to get picked up and my estimated weight of those items is like $150. They didn't even allow my regular postal worker to just take the items as he was bringing me my mail the way that it normally happens. They actually sent a special truck that had more room in it to take my items because the regular postal truck was not going to have that much room. If you ever look inside one of those things when they're delivering your mail, it is chock full of mail and there was no way that they were going to have room for my like 72 bags or whatever. And so porch pickup really was a lifesaver. As I experienced the one time I didn't have porch pickup, the difference between porch pickup and taking things to the post office myself was huge. So now let's talk about the things that surprised me about selling on Whatnot. And I'm not even talking about like, doing it 10 days in a row. I'm just talking about Whatnot in general. The first thing that really took me by surprise was Whatnot's marketplace. This was something, again, that my Whatnot rep Lydia had suggested I do. She suggested that I have at least 50 items in my Whatnot marketplace available to people to shop from every time I went live. The marketplace on Whatnot is very much like what you might be used to if you're used to shopping on Poshmark or eBay. It's just like a place where you go list items and people can search for those items the way that they do on Poshmark and eBay. If someone's looking for a Lululemon dress, they can just search Lululemon dress and people who have Lululemon dresses listed in their marketplace, those listings will pop up and people can do things like send offers or buy those items outright. They can bundle. It's very similar to some of these other reselling platforms that you might be familiar with. I was honestly pretty hesitant to do that part of selling on Whatnot. I just didn't think that it was going to be worth my time to get listings in the marketplace. And I think that's because I didn't really understand the power of having things available for sale on Whatnot's marketplace. First of all, getting items into the marketplace is pretty easy if you already have listings up on Poshmark because Whatnot has like a bulk upload feature where you can take listings straight from Poshmark and just throw them onto Whatnot. It takes the pictures, it takes the listing title, the description, everything. The only thing that it doesn't really take is the weight because you don't have to say how much something weighs when you list it on Poshmark. So honestly, Whatnot just kind of guesses. They're like, okay, pair of pants, we're going to say that it weighs this amount. So since I was easily importing listings into the Whatnot marketplace using Poshmark, I decided, okay, I'm just going to go all in on this. I'm going to upload a ton of listings. I think like for that first few shows, I had like over 200 listings or something. And I was like, I'm going to also mark down the price of items that I'm just sick of looking at. So I had items for as little as $5 in the Whatnot marketplace. And some things I just kept regular price, but I honestly like dropped the price of most listings to the lowest that I was willing to let go of them for. And then I just kind of let them sit there and didn't really expect anything to happen, but I just kind of did it because that was part of the agreement that I had with Whatnot was I will have at least 50 items in my Whatnot marketplace. And then like probably like in my second or third show, first of all, I had some amazing moderators for my Whatnot shows. These were just people that volunteered within the show. I'd be like, anyone want to mod for me? And people were like, sure, I'll mod for you. Like, why would they volunteer to do that? Because they're awesome. They're amazing people. So I had these wonderful mods and they would say things like, hey guys, Becky has like over 200 listings in her marketplace. Make sure to check them out. There are some things that are $5 or less. And in like maybe my second or third show, I started noticing that there were these random notifications that would come across my screen. It would say like, so-and-so purchased something. And I didn't even know what was going on. I thought it was just, that they were buying whatever item I had up for auction. But I was like, that's weird. Why does that notification look different? And I realized when I, finished the show and pulled up my orders from that show immediately following the show, that people had purchased items from my marketplace during the show. And because they purchased those items during the show, I was able to ship those items with the items that they purchased that I had, been auctioning during the show itself. And so they were able to save on shipping as well. And that's why it was smart for them to buy those items during the show because Whatnot would combine all of those orders together. I also had some people purchase items from my Whatnot marketplace outside of me being live. Like I would just get notifications throughout the day of, hey, so-and-so purchased something from you. Some of those people were people that had been in shows previously, but some I think were just people that had searched for specific items or specific brands and they saw my show in the marketplace and they either sent me an offer or they just purchased it outright. It was crazy. Like I didn't understand that that was something that could happen until my moderators started, encouraging people to check out my marketplace. And so in future shows, I uploaded even more items from Poshmark and I started being the one to say, hey, I also have a ton of items in my marketplace. Feel free to check those out, especially if I'm kind of showing items that you don't really care about in my Whatnot show right now. There were so many items that sold from my marketplace, and those were items that I already had listed on Poshmark and eBay and Mercari and all those other platforms. It was wonderful because a lot of those listings, to be honest with you, were just like super stale listings that I was so sick of looking at. And the reason that they sold is because I marked them down so low, but I'm still making a profit. I'm able to move those pieces out. Everyone's happy. I think I started with over 1,100 active listings across my different platforms. And once I was done with my 10 days on Whatnot, I think that number dropped to like 980 something. It was crazy the amount of active listings I was able to sell through Marketplace. And also some of those listings I had in live shows, but the majority of it I think really was through Marketplace sales. So it was really thanks to a combination of, my Whatnot rep encouraging me to have some items available for sale in my Whatnot marketplace. And then just like people who know more about Whatnot in my shows, educating me on how to really leverage the items in my marketplace to make even more sales, that I was able to get even more out of my Whatnot experience than I bargained for. And even though I was moving some of those items, like I said, for like $5, $10, Whatnot does take a smaller cut than a lot of other platforms. It comes out to about 11%, I would say. So even though I was selling things for $5, again, these were items that I just wanted out of my house. And by selling those items for $5, I was making more money on those items than I would have had they sold on a platform like Poshmark. So another thing that I was super surprised by when it came to Whatnot was what kinds of things sold on Whatnot. This is to me kind of the big mystery. There are things that I will bring to a show and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna do amazing. And then like nobody bids on it. Or things that I I'm like, I don't know, I'll just try it out and see what happens and I'll throw it in a show. And I'm like shocked at how much it sells for. I don't know that I am an expert yet when it comes to like what's going to do well on Whatnot, but I do feel like there were so many things that surprised me as far as how well they did on Whatnot. You know, there were like J-Jill pieces that actually did really well and got like multiple bids and sold for close to how much I would probably have sold that item for on eBay. And then there were, you know, items that I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to do so good. And then it would not get any bids, or maybe it would get like that one starting bid of $3. So that continues to surprise me when it comes to Whatnot, is what kinds of things do well and what kinds of things don't. There just still doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. I'm going to keep at it and I'll let you know what I learned. But I was most surprised, I would say, by the things that I was scared to sell, because I was scared that they weren't going to sell for enough. Things like, you know, I had found a pair of Tom Brown like sweat shorts at Plato's Closet. I think I had $3 into them. They retailed for like over $700, and they were selling consistently online for like $75 to like $110, $120. I remember being like, I should just list these online, right? Like I shouldn't put these in my Whatnot show. I should just go ahead and list them the traditional way. But I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna put it in my Whatnot show, see what happens. If anything, they'll hopefully get a lot of people to that show. They ended up selling for $90, which is basically what I probably would have gotten for them had I listed them on Poshmark. And I didn't have to go through the process of photographing them and listing them and doing all of those things. I just threw them up in a show and was able to sell them for the same amount that I would have on another platform. Another surprising sale, kind of like in the opposite way, was a pair of new Doc Marten boots. They sold for $53, which is obviously less than I would probably get for them on a different platform, but not that much less. And again, I didn't have to do all of that work, like, you know, photographing it, listing it the way that I would have had to sell it on other platforms. And I still had a really great profit on those boots because I was able to pick them up for like $10 or $15 on Plato's Closet. So it all kind of balances out. While you do typically make more money per item if you list them on other platforms, you're able to sell so much more at one time on Whatnot. And that's what like alleviates that pain a little bit of not getting top dollar for every single item that you sell, is knowing that at the end of the experience, though, you're moving more product, you're actually making more money in one go. And so it all kind of balances out, if that makes sense. The last thing that I'll talk about as far as what surprised me when it came to selling on Whatnot was the power of multicasting to YouTube. This was another thing that Lydia, my Whatnot rep, had suggested that I do, was to also have my Whatnot show go live on YouTube at the same time that I was live on Whatnot. And at first I was like, I don't know what the value of that would be. Like, I cannot imagine anyone on YouTube just like watching a Whatnot show on YouTube. Like what are they going to get out of that? I was also worried about just like having too many things going on while I was live, but it actually ended up being such a great way to get more people from YouTube over to Whatnot. And I know not everyone watching this is a YouTuber like myself, but even if you have like Facebook or Twitch, you can multicast to those platforms as well. And maybe like if you decide to go live one day and you multicast to Facebook at the same time, you may have friends and family who are like, oh my gosh, like what is Bethany doing? That looks kind of cool. I want to join her over there because I want to buy some of that stuff. It really was a great way to bring more people over from YouTube to Whatnot in a pretty organic way. Like I saw comments on YouTube of people being like, how can I buy what she's showing right now? And I was like, come over to Whatnot. The link is right there. And they make it so easy. And it was actually such a powerful way to reach more people. Okay, so now let's talk about things that I liked about my 10-day Whatnot experience, as well as things that I didn't really like about it. The first thing that I really liked was just moving so much sale inventory. It was a surprise. It was great. It was wonderful to not only move out new product that I source specifically for my Whatnot shows, but also to move out pieces that I had listed on other platforms that just were not selling for whatever reason. That was great. But probably the best thing about selling on Whatnot was all of you. I'm sure not everyone who was in all of my shows were, people who came over from YouTube or Instagram, but I do think probably the majority of the people in my shows were people from this community, and you guys are just the best. It was honestly like so ridiculous and so beautiful and so humbling how much you guys supported me and loved on me over these past 10 days. And I do think that although going live 10 days in a row was really challenging and difficult for a number of reasons that I kind of already stated, what was really cool about it was that a lot of you showed up multiple times, and we were able to spend just so much time together over those 10 days and really kind of create deeper relationships. And I don't know, like that was so special to me. I honestly kind of went through like a little withdrawal, that's a hard word to say, withdrawal. I went through like a whatnot hanging out with you guys withdrawal period when I left for my vacation for LA, because I was so used to seeing so many of you every day for 10 days, and then all of a sudden it was like all gone. I cannot overemphasize how much it meant to me that you guys were there and hanging out with me, and I don't know, it was just wonderful. You guys really are what made it the most worthwhile experience. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, if you were one of those people, even if you didn't buy anything, even if you just like hung out, it was just really amazing. So thank you so much. Even Lydia, my Whatnot rep, she was in a lot of the shows, and she was like, you really have amazing people that show up for your shows. And I was like, I know, like, I don't know what I did to deserve them. But again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. So let's talk about the things that maybe I didn't care so much for when it came to this 10-day experience. So one of the things that was difficult about selling on Whatnot is that I use a Chrome extension called List Perfectly, and it's what I use to cross-list onto multiple platforms. One platform that it does not support yet, however, is Whatnot. And one of the things that I like about List Perfectly is a newer feature that they have where they will auto delist items when it sells somewhere. So if something sells on Poshmark, we'll shut it down on all of the other platforms that you have it listed on. It doesn't do that on Whatnot though, because Whatnot is not one of the platforms that it supports. And so every time I sold something on another platform, I would have to go into Whatnot and check and see if I had it in the marketplace. And if so, I had to delete it manually. Same thing went for when I sold something on Whatnot that was listed on all of those other platforms. I had to hurry over to List Perfectly and end that particular listing on all of my other platforms. So that was just like another kind of added extra headache. And honestly, part of the reason as to why my shipping took so long is because I had to take the time to manually end the listing either on other platforms or end listings that had sold other places on Whatnot. Another thing that I found was there were a couple items that when I uploaded them from Poshmark to Whatnot, I noticed that there were a few duplicate listings in Whatnot. And I don't know if that's user error, if I made the mistake, if it's like a glitch on their end. It's possible that I had the same listing on Poshmark twice. I don't know. Or I felt like, again, this could be user error. I don't know. I felt like there were things that I had in the marketplace that I actually would put in a show that would sell in a show, but then it would still be available on marketplace. I don't know. I wish Whatnot had a way to be like, alert, like you have the same thing listed twice, and that way that doesn't happen. But I spent a stupid amount of time one day just kind of going through the marketplace, making sure that I didn't have multiples of things in a show and in marketplace. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but that was a little frustrating and just like a little hard to wrap my head around. And then finally, the hard thing about Whatnot is when you are selling a lot of items in one show, it just takes up a lot more time at once. You're selling 40 items versus maybe selling 3 items that you would normally sell on, your other platforms. And it just takes more time to preload those items into the show. It takes more time to like run the show. It takes more time to actually ship out those items. The shipping is what always kills me. And then you times that by 10, because I did it 10 days in a row. I just really had so little time for anything else in my life. I feel like outside of spending time with my family and the occasional, like I said, meal with friends and like still going to church and stuff like that, I just had no life outside of Whatnot. And that was self-inflicted. I did that to myself by, making this a 10-day thing. I would not recommend that to anybody, but it does take up more time at once because you're selling more at once. So the final and biggest question is, will I keep selling on Whatnot after this 10-day experience? And my answer is a resounding yes. I will just never do it the same way again. I will never do this 10-day in a row thing, especially with like also doing 10 videos on YouTube. Like that was just too much, but it did make me want to commit to at least doing one show a week for the remainder of the summer before things get busy at school. I think that that's doable, it's manageable. And the main reason I want to do it is because yes, it's nice to make like a quick $200, $300, $400 in one sitting, but also just to get to hang out with you guys. You know, from this 10-day experience, I feel like I've learned so much more about what kinds of things to sell, the pacing of a show, like how to set up a show for the best success. I learned a lot and I want to continue putting those things into practice. And although shipping really is a nightmare, it feels really good to move out so many pieces at once. Like it feels really good to fill up an IKEA bag or two and be like, oh my gosh, like I sold all that stuff today. You know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely plan on going live at least once a week for the remainder of the summer. So definitely check out the link in my description to see my Whatnot profile and see what shows I have coming up. You can bookmark them and we can continue to hang out all summer long. Not for 10 days in a row, but at least once a week. And I'm really excited to get back on there after my LA trip and just see you guys again. I will leave you actually with a spreadsheet that I created just so I could kind of see for myself how I did on Whatnot and how each of those 10 shows performed. You'll see the show date, you'll see the title of each show, you'll see how many items I sold in each show, and that is a combination of things that I had for sale in the show itself, you know, things that were like auctioned off, as well as marketplace items that sold. You'll see how much I did in sales, as well as how much I did in actual revenue. That is, you know, once you subtract Whatnot's fees. You'll see the average order price, which obviously is a lot lower than what you're going to see on a platform like Poshmark or eBay. And then you'll see how many people bought items from me in each show, as well as how many of those buyers were first-time buyers. And you'll notice that the majority of the buyers from my first show were first-time buyers. They were probably all people that came over from YouTube and Instagram for the first time. And you'll see how many of those buyers were returning buyers, people who had purchased from me in the past. And you'll notice that that number goes up as shows went on because a lot of those people were coming from previous shows. You'll see how many minutes each show was, as well as the max concurrent viewers per show, which means like at the point in any given show that I had the most number of people, how many people was that? And then finally, the total number of views for each show. And I also provide the total number when it applies. So like the total sales, total revenue, and then finally, you know, the average for each show. I did have 15 sales that happened outside of shows. These were marketplace sales that were not included in all of the other numbers. And you can see there were 15 sales that resulted in $127 in gross sales. It's just a little bit deeper dive of my numbers if you want to look at that. But if you enjoy the video, let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe for more content like this. There's probably going to be a lot fewer Whatnot shows in the upcoming months just because this was a lot of time that I dedicated to Whatnot on my channel because of this 10-day partnership that I was doing with them. But if you want more reselling content about platforms like Whatnot or other platforms or just reselling tips in general, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. If this is actually your first Whatnot video from me, I do have a playlist of just Whatnot content that you can check out here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!